Exposed. The sinister secrets of room 403 at the haunted motel. Everyone fears to enter. Sarah stepped into the Timberland Motel with a sense of dread curling in her stomach. The flickering neon sign outside cast shadows that danced along the cracked pavement. It was late, and the only sound came from the howling wind whipping around her as she clutched her two children close. This was their last stop. There was no turning back now. The old wooden door creaked as she pushed it open, letting in an unsettling chill that sent shivers down her spine. Room 403 awaited. The air inside felt thick and heavy, as if it held secrets better left buried. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, matching her children's hushed whispers as they gazed around. The peeling wallpaper seemed to shift, distorting visions of the past. As Sarah stepped inside, the unsettling silence closed in, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The room smelled of mildew and something unidentifiable, something rotten. "Mom, I don't like it here," her oldest, Julia, murmured, her wide eyes reflecting the reality of their situation. Sarah forced a brave smile, trying to dispel the fear that clung to them. "It's just for a few nights," she said, hoping her words held truth. The fluorescent light above flickered, and for a second, she imagined she saw a shadow flit across the wall, but a nervous breath was all it took to convince herself it was just her mind playing tricks. As the night deepened, she tried to tuck her kids in, telling stories to coax sleep. But strange noises began to seep through the cracked walls, whispers like echoes of forgotten souls muttering her name. She could feel ice creep into the room, wrapping around her ankles and climbing higher. Shaking off the chill, she stepped to the bathroom, where she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the cracked mirror. But it wasn't just her face staring back. The edges rippled as though something lurked behind her, just out of sight. "Let us get some sleep," she said, her voice trembling. But fear wouldn't let her be. She sat on the edge of the bed, trying to focus on the diner where she worked the night shift. Just a few more weeks and they would be free. No more terror, she whispered to herself. Just then, a tiny voice broke her concentration. "Mom, look what we found," Julia squealed, her excitement filling the air and momentarily drowning out the cold dread. Under loose floorboards, they uncovered a tattered newspaper clipping. Sarah's stomach sank as she read the headline. "Mysterious disappearances linked to Timberland Motel's room 403. Her vision blurred, and panic surged. Previous tenants vanished, driven mad by things gone bump in the night. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Desperate for reassurance, Sarah hurried to the door, only to find it locked tight against her increasingly frantic pounding. Shadows danced just beyond the glass, figures shifting, darting, threatening their peace. She darted a glance toward the children, huddled together, fear mapping their faces as the wind howled outside. The room seemed to pulse, breathing with an unseen life. Those laughter echoes twisted into mocking taunts, high-pitched and grotesque. Doubts gnawed at her. Was the danger real, or was she losing her grip on reality? Each night, the terror clawed at her, hungry for more. Then came the moment she dreaded most, the darkness swallowing the last flicker of light. At the peak of her anxiety, two icy hands gripped her shoulders. She turned to see nothing but shadows and heard a hostile whisper surge. Through the silence, "You should have left." The room slurred into thick darkness, and as her breath quickened, she realized the fight for her family's safety had only just begun. With malevolent secrets packed into room 403 pressing against her heart, Sarah wondered if escape was ever truly an option. The walls thrummed with whispers, teasing her mind like nervous shadows drawn forth by an unseen puppeteer. Sarah's heart raced, thudding against her chest, echoing the terrified whispers of her children. What twisted fate awaited them? She needed to find a way out. But the air felt thick and hostile, wrapping around them like an iron grip. Panic pulsed through her as she faced the apparent calm of her children. Julia clutched her younger brother, Ethan, both of them wide-eyed, their innocence now immersed in suspicion. Sarah felt the heat of their fear, a tangible pressure that pressed against her chest. She had to remain strong, but her resolve crumbled under the weight of the unseen menace. "Stay close," she rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. Each step toward the far corner of the room felt like she was wading through quicksand. She glanced back at the door, desperation spiking with every second it remained locked. The shadows seemed to stretch and slither, wrapping around her, sending icy tendrils creeping up her spine. Every creak of the floorboards beneath felt like a warning. There was something about this room that craved their fear, their despair. She tried to drown out the whispers, clenching her fists as she squinted into the dark corners, each flicker of movement sending chills racing through her. Suddenly, a chilling laugh escaped from the space above, echoing off the walls. It was a childish laugh, distorted and wrong, cutting deep into her thoughts. It mocked their plight. Each time the sound faded, the whispers returned, intensifying, crawling deeper into her psyche. Get out, they chanted, relentless. "Mom, I'm scared." Ethan's small voice broke through her fog, the innocent plea puncturing her heart. She spun around, eyes wild, searching for the courage she so desperately needed. "I know, baby. We'll find a way." The strength of her determination waned, indifference clawing at her. Could they stay here? Did she have any chance of escape? When she dared to look again, the children were staring toward the window. Their faces were pale, reflecting sheer terror. She turned, but the glass offered only blackness, an abyss waiting to swallow them whole. And then there it was, a flicker of movement, just above the window ledge. A shape subtle yet pronounced, watching them. Sarah's breath hitched as she realized she wasn't alone. An outline began to materialize, like a fog rolling in from the depths of despair, soft, spiraling, with eyes that blinked beneath the surface. An uninvited guest. It was almost human, yet not. "Mom!" Julia screamed, the shrill sound cutting through the thick tension. The thing shimmered, becoming clearer. An apparition wrapped in darkness, an unholy grin splitting its face. For a moment, Sarah found herself paralyzed by fear. Negative thoughts swirling. Had they invited this terror here with them? The figure reached out, elongated fingers curling toward the glass, craving freedom. "Don't look at it," she shouted, yanking her children to her side. But the horror had already claimed them. They gawked at the creature, unable to look away. With an unsettling crack, the window shattered outward. Glass rained down like confetti, each shard clinking against the floor. But the figure merely expanded, filling their vision, consuming them with its darkness. And as the piercing darkness enveloped her, Sarah finally understood the sinister truth that gripped room 403. Their presence here wasn't by chance, but by a dark design. Her voice frantically called for the children. But the room erupted with new screams, her own echoing back at her as the laughter morphed into something else, something far more sinister. Sarah's heart plunged as she felt cold hands wrap around her, pulling her into the dark beyond. What remained in the wake of the screams would leave a chilling void. Were there others trapped, willing to share their nightmare? In that moment, as shadows danced, the tension rose. The night hadn't ended. It had just begun. Darkness loomed like a thick blanket, and the secrets of room 403 were still alive, hungry for more. But at what cost? The air thinned, pressing down hard, and as dread washed over her, Sarah realized the worst. It wasn't just survival they would fight for. It was the very essence of their souls lost within the walls of terror. The darkness swallowed them whole. Sarah felt the cold grip around her, blurring her vision, her thoughts, and her very will to fight. Panic surged like a tide, each wave threatening to pull her under. She fumbled for Julia and Ethan, her fingers grazing their small forms, desperate to feel their warmth against the encroaching chill. "Mom!" Ethan's voice cut through, a fragile note teetering on the brink of insanity. "What is happening?" "I don't know," she shrieked, but even she didn't believe her own words. All she could see was a swirling mass of shadows, its ominous laugh mixing with her children's terrified cries, creating a symphony of dread that enveloped them. Let go. Let go. Julia's screams bounced off unseen walls. But the darkness clung to them, tightening its hold like a vice. Suddenly, the laughter morphed into a cacophony of whispering voices. Stay with us, the whispers slithered around Sarah, intertwining with her fear, promising comfort yet filled with malice. Shadows flickered into forms' faces that gaped, mouths wide in unholy laughter. She flinched as cool, ghostly fingers brushed against her cheek, coaxing her to surrender. Run, Sarah barked, fueled by adrenaline, and yanked the children away. Each step felt like wading through tar, thick and sticky. A door appeared where there had been none before, glowing faintly like a distant promise of escape. Mom, I can't, Ethan whimpered, the weight of terror pinning him down. Julia clutched his hand, her face a mask of pure fear. Trust me. In a burst of will, Sarah shoved her children toward the door. The grip of the darkness clawed at her back, pulling her into the void. They stumbled through the door into a long corridor, choked with shadows, an oppressive silence falling over them like damp cloth. The walls shimmered with a translucent sheen, revealing glimpses of grotesque figures, all the while whispering in a language older than time. Come play forever, where are we? Julia scanned the corridor, her small body trembling. Shadows darted behind them, flitting in their periphery like phantoms. Don't look, just keep moving, Sarah commanded, her chest tightening as dread climbed higher. Bright lights flickered above, momentarily revealing unsettling images of other families lost in the very same trap. Their faces twisted in fear, trapped between screaming mouths and silent, hopeless eyes. As the remnants of their terror circled Sarah, she felt it clawing at her heart. Mom? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper now, filled with confusion. What if? His voice trailed off, fear clearly etching into his small features. Shoo, we'll make it through. Just keep looking forward. But she could hear the doubt, her own heartbeat echoing the sentiment, a tight drum of fear and resolve wrapped in desperation. To the far end of the corridor, a door loomed. It looked different, fresher, almost inviting. But shadows whispered warnings, crawling around her feet like serpents. Why, Sarah? Why do you resist? They taunted her, instilling doubt that somehow everything would be okay if they just surrendered. Not now, she growled, clenching her fists, forcing herself toward the light. Suddenly, a sharp scream shattered the silence. It was Julia. Sarah turned, her daughter's eyes were wide with terror. Mom, it's coming back. The corridor distorted, stretching endlessly behind them. The shadows thickened, darting forward, lunging toward Julia and Ethan. Sarah felt a surge of pure instinct, the need to protect her children igniting her fight. Run, she roared, barreling toward the door as the shadows cascaded around them, fingers of darkness wrapping tighter. But the door began to close, creaking ominously as it narrowed. Without thinking, Sarah scooped up Ethan with one arm, gripping Julia's hand with the other. They burst through the door just in time, slamming it behind them, yet the sound of laughter resonated through the crack, bitter and mocking, panting heavily. Sarah surveyed their new surroundings, a dimly lit room, almost identical to the one they had just escaped. But now it felt worse. The air was heavy, stifling. Julia and Ethan huddled close, their previous terror morphing into an eerie stillness. What now? Julia's voice trembled. Before Sarah could respond, the whispers returned, this time louder, more insidious. You can't escape us, there's nowhere left to run, she shivered. This was no ordinary hotel. Whatever malevolent force held them in its grip was stronger than she'd ever anticipated. In that moment, she understood. The more they struggled, the tighter the noose would draw. They were not just battling for survival but for their very souls, and as Sarah stared into the encroaching shadows, a single thought pierced her mind. Had they unwittingly unleashed something darker than themselves? Desperate now, she scanned the room for an exit. Her heart thundered as the shadows flickered, growing restless, eager for her next move. What if they were never meant to leave room 403? What if surviving was the greatest illusion of all? The room pulsed with a low hum, an unsettling cadence that seemed to resonate with the very marrow of her bones. Shadows crawled along the walls, swirling, twisting as if searching for a way in. Sarah turned to her children. Their wide eyes reflected her fear, yet she had to stay strong. "Okay, we need a plan," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We can't just wait here." Ethan clutched Julia's arm, pulling her closer, the small boy's face buried against his sister. It was clear they felt the weight of the room pressing down on them, every corner filled with suffocating dread. "Look for something, anything that could help us," Sarah urged, moving toward the nearest wall, scanning for cracks or imperfections. The whispers grew louder. They thrummed in her ears, filling her with a sense of imminent dread. "You can't hide from us, no," Julia shivered. "Mom, they know we're here." "I know." The room seemed to close around her as she pressed her palm against the wall, feeling the cold, slick surface. There had to be a way out. A sudden noise behind her made her whirl around a chair scraping against the floor. Ethan gasped. "What was that?" "Just stay close. Okay?" Sarah replied, heart racing. The chair was moving back on its own, shifting towards them like a neglected piece of furniture coming to life. Her skin prickled. "Mom, it moved. It really moved." Ethan's voice trembled as the dark whispers morphed into shrill laughter, the sound ricocheting off the walls. She swallowed hard. "I know what we're dealing with now." She took a deep breath, rallying her courage. "We will face it together." Just as she said the words, the shadows from the corner lunged toward them, a dark wave of swirling terror. They poured like a liquid cloud, thick and suffocating, and Sarah felt her heart thud like a war drum. "Move!" Sarah shouted, grabbing both children's hands. They darted toward the door, but it slammed shut with a bone-chilling bang. "Why won't it open?" Julia cried, panic skyrocketing in her voice. "Because they don't want us to leave," Sarah muttered, struggling to maintain her composure. The voices grew more distorted, blending with her racing thoughts. "Stay with me, given Mom." Ethan's eyes were wide. "It's everywhere. Don't look at it." Sarah snapped, wrenching herself back to the moment. Setting her jaw, she turned back to the room. "There has to be something here." Then, as if summoned by her desperation, a ghostly figure materialized, a woman with hollow eyes, lips twisted into a cruel smile. She hovered near the chair, her voice caressing the air like a chilling breeze. "You cannot escape what you are already part of." The air grew colder as the woman's laughter filled the space, weaving through the shadows. Heart-pounding, Sarah stepped forward. "Who are you?" "I am the keeper," the apparition replied, tilting her head. "You have entered a realm that craves souls hungry for curiosity." The children shivered behind her, fear gnawing at their courage. Desperation swirled in Sarah. She wasn't just battling for their lives. She was grappling for the very essence of their being. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice rising. "The choice is yours. Surrender, or let the dread swallow you whole," the woman said, her smile widening as shadows danced eagerly around her. "Let us not give them what they want," Sarah whispered to her children, squeezing their hands tighter. "We must fight." But before she could strategize, a huge shadow descended from the ceiling, bearing fangs sharper than any nightmare. It loomed over them, and Sarah felt her heart plummet. "Why fight what you cannot win?" The ghostly keeper leaned closer, her icy breath washing over them. "You're already part of our collection." As panic surged, Sarah's heart raced with a blaze of determination. There had to be a way. She had to believe. "Julia, Ethan, look for anything at all," she urged, even as the shadows crept closer, suffocating her resolve. But as she turned back to them, she realized their terrified faces seemed blank. Were they fading? Mom, Julia blinked, and slowly, the light dimmed in her. I can't know." The horror crashed over Sarah like a tidal wave, the darkness invading their world, and she screamed, "No, Dante, let it take you." The whispers crescendoed into a feral roar, and in that moment, a blinding flash surged through the darkness, revealing a glimmer of hope. It filigreed around a memory she had buried deep within her mind. Can it be? Suddenly, the shadows screeched in wrath. You're not supposed to remember. What had she forgotten? Sarah's breath quickened. Had she almost lost the only weapon she had? The answer loomed just out of reach, and the darkness clamored for her, grasping at every shred of her will. Mom! Help us! With one last desperate lunge, Sarah reached for the heart of the shadow, a truth buried beneath years of fear. What was it? What was the key? As the walls began to shake, and laughter transformed into screams, Sarah knew time was short. They had to escape or lose everything. Think, Sarah, she urged herself. Would she find the strength to use what she remembered before it was too late? But in the enveloping chaos, a familiar voice called softly, "Join us, stay forever." The darkness beckoned. How could she hold onto the light when the shadows were so much louder? Mom! Julia's voice cut through the dread, and just like that, Sarah was thrown into the eye of the storm, one last question echoing in the vast void of her mind. What was the truth that could save them? But what she didn't know was the shadows had already begun to close in. The world exploded into a cacophony of screams and laughter, a twisted symphony composed by the shadows. They writhed and clawed at the air, hungry for the essence of fear. Sarah forced her eyes back to her children, desperately trying to hold on to their fading presence. Ethan, Julia. She squeezed their hands harder, feeling their warmth quickly turn to ice. Focus on me. We'll get out of here. A collective roar from the shadows surged toward her like a flood, pushing her back. The keeper's laughter hung heavy in the air, a mocking sound that reverberated through her bones. Each note struck like a hammer against her sanity, forcing her to confront the truth that had been buried deep within her heart. Remember, a faint voice whispered, but it was drowned out by the chaos. Panic clawed at her throat. What was she supposed to remember? Mom, it's too much, Ethan cried, his voice cracking. I can't take it. No, don't say that. She could feel the chill creeping closer, wrapping around her family like chains. We are stronger than this. Suddenly, she felt it. The ghostly pressure on her chest lifted slightly as a fragment of the past broke through her fog of fear. The rain-soaked memories of her childhood bubbled up, each wisp of recollection thrusting her deeper into the shadows. She remembered the old tales her grandmother had told her, ancient stories of spirits and countercurses, warnings about realms that craved souls. Think, she muttered under her breath as the darkness pulsed with insatiable hunger. There was something, a way to fight them. The shadows screamed in desperation as a rush of confidence surged through her. She focused hard, envisioning the bright light of that forgotten strength. The hope nestled in the tales of old. By the strength of my love, by the bond of family, we will not fall to your darkness. At her words, a thin beam of light erupted from her heart, breaking through the suffocating gloom. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if burned by light. Hope flickered in her children's eyes as their faces began to regain color. Sarah pushed forward, fueled by desperation and maternal ferocity. Stand your ground, she shouted. We can break this. The woman beside the chair shrieked, the lovely facade cracking beneath the weight of Sarah's resolve. You think you can fight this? You are bound to this place. You cannot win. As the shadows writhed around them like snakes, Sarah felt her strength wavering. They seemed to grow thicker, suffocating her resolve, but she refused to let go. I will remember, she asserted defiantly, her voice steady against the terrifying tide. I will cling to the light. With every word, the light flared, illuminating the spectral figure before them. The laughter turned to howls as the shadows curled back from its brilliance. Now a raging tempest of furious whispers. But the keeper surged closer, a dark blur propelling toward them. You forget, love can also bind, she hissed, her breath cold enough to freeze thoughts. Not if we stand together, Sarah yelled, pulling her children closer, summoning every emotion in her heart. We are family. Love will be our strength. And just as the icy fingers of despair grasped for her throat, a burst of warmth enveloped them, forcing the shadows back. The walls trembled and cracked, splintering under the pressure of the confrontation. "Now, run!" Sarah shouted urgently, but a powerful wind whipped through the room, knocking the chairs over like leaves in a storm. They stumbled, disoriented, but her voice cut through the chaos. "Keep moving!" As they ran, the beam of light began to pulse with each heartbeat, illuminating the depths of the swirling darkness. The whispers muttered in rage, the shadows clawing at them, eager for their escape to fail. But in the heart of terror, doubt flickered. What if we can't escape? Julia's voice trembled as they dashed past the frenzied shadows. "Then we fight until the end," Sarah vowed, her heart pounding in rhythm with the oncoming dread. "Fight with everything we have." Suddenly, a door appeared at the end of the room, glowing faintly as if inviting them. There, the exit. But just as they reached for it, the keeper's horrific form filled the space before them. "You think you can escape? You belong to me," Ethan faltered, fear freezing him in place. "Mom, I can't face her." "Then remember why you must," Sarah cried, a fierce spark igniting in her belly. "Do you remember the stories?" And she felt it, the collective memory of a family's love ready to draw upon the light they summoned, a force unbreakable. "Let us go," she shouted, launching forward, knowing that every moment counted. As they lunged toward the glimmering door, the shadows screeched, desperate tendrils reaching for them. Sarah threw one last glance back, feeling the weight of darkness against her spine. But what she saw chilled her to the core. The shadows twisted tighter around the children, pulling them away, the light waning as fear seeped back in. "No, not my children." The door was within reach, a frame of hope and safety, but it flickered like a candle in the wind. Sarah's heart raced. Can love truly conquer this? She wondered frantically. As the room shook around them, the darkness seemed to pulse with lethal intent. "Join us," the keeper cried, her eyes burning with malevolence. "You're already part of my collection. Would they make it to the door? Would love be enough to sever the chains of despair?" As the shadows closed in, Sarah's scream echoed in the tempest. "We will not give in." And as the darkness enveloped her, she felt a terrible choice loom on the horizon. The air thickened, stinging with the cloying scent of despair as the shadows pressed closer, eager to reclaim what they felt belonged to them. Sarah could hear Julia's swift breathing next to her, frantic and shallow, and Ethan's small whimpers cut through the suffocating fog of terror. The door shimmered, a mirage of salvation just within grasp, but the keeper's malevolent grin broadened, almost illuminating her dark features. "You can't escape the truth," she hissed. The shadows trembled and pulsed around her like a living thing, each tendril vining toward them. They knew every fear, every weakness, and they were hungry. With a flick of her wrist, the room shook, and the walls felt like they were closing in. The once inviting light of the door flickered, dimming as a cacophony of whispers raged. "Join us, you belong with us." The words twisted like thorns and pricked at Sarah's resolve. She stumbled, feeling the cold grip of despair threatening to pull her under. "Mom, hold on," Ethan cried, pulling at her sleeve. She could see the trepidation in her children's eyes, mirrored reflections of her own terror. "Don't listen," she shouted through the clamoring voices, drawing her strength from the bottoms of her shoes to the tips of her fingers. "We are stronger together. Remember the stories." The shadows recoiled as she uttered the words of the old tales, the ones that had comforted her in dark times. Each story was a whisper of courage, every memory a flicker of light in the shadows' chaos. In the deepest recess of her mind, she recalled a potion that her grandmother spoke of, one that could sever the binds of fear. But did she have enough of the old ways inside her to wield it now? "Whatever it takes, my love," Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the clamorous hysteria. With each word, the warmth in her heart began to flare again, a small fire against the encroaching darkness. "We will not succumb to your terror." As her heart pounded fiercely against her ribcage, the beam of light blasted outward in a rush of brilliance, scattering the shadows momentarily. Ethan caught onto the glow, his face reflecting determination and resolve. "We will fight," he declared, gripping Julia's hand tightly. But just as they plotted their next move, the keeper lunged forward, her face twisted in rage. "You can't escape this. Your fear fuels me." The shadows raged behind her, undulating in a dance of violence. Taking a deep breath, Sarah rallied her strength. "We will face you," she vowed, "with love as our shield and unity as our weapon. We will not be your prey." With newfound urgency, Sarah pulled her children close, enveloping them in the warm light that surged from her heart. It became a shield thrumming with energy, prompting the shadows to writhe and hiss like snakes in retreat. The keeper's face darkened, sealing her lips in a fierce line. "Then suffer the consequence," she howled. The shadows surged anew, an angry wave crashing toward them. Sarah's courage trembled but held fast. "Run now," she screamed, driving forward, feeling the blossoming strength surge within the familial bond. They fled toward the door, but the shadows retaliated with ferocity, reaching out with clawed fingers, desperate to reclaim their grip on the frightened souls. Ethan slipped slightly, losing momentum, but Sarah felt his heart pounding against her palm, and in that moment the brilliance of their love flared again, pushing back the suffocating cold. "Don't look back," she urged with every ounce of will she could muster. "Just keep going." As they burst through the door, a blinding light engulfed them, an explosion of warmth and clarity. Was it freedom or another trap? Sarah's heart raced, eyes widening as the reality of their escape sunk in. But then, in an instant, the radiant realm around them shattered. Instead of safety, they found themselves in a narrow, dimly lit hallway, thick with shadows and entangled whispers that coiled viciously around them. "What just happened?" Julia whispered, trembling beside her mother. The door slammed shut behind them, echoing in the stillness, sealing their fate yet again. Sarah glanced around, every instinct screaming that the fight was far from over. "We have to figure this out," she said, fear creeping back into her voice. "There's something here, something we need to uncover." Then, with chilling clarity, she heard it, an echoing giggle, sharp and mocking, slicing through the silence. And in that moment, she knew the fear was not just bound to shadows. Something else awaited them in the darkness, watching. "What are we missing?" Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, tiny yet laced with determination. Suddenly, Sarah felt a pit in her stomach, understanding dawning on her. What if the truth we're seeking is not just out there? And as the shadows twisted closer, she realized they might have overlooked a darker secret lurking in the shadows of their own hearts. The hallway stretched on in twisted shadows, its damp walls seemingly pulsing with breathless anticipation. Each step echoed jarringly, a reminder of their isolation. The oppressive darkness sneered at them, seeming to taunt their every feeling. Sarah felt it wrap around her, tightening, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "Mom," Ethan's voice trembled, squeaking like an old hinge. "I don't like this." "Neither do I," she whispered, kneeling so she was eye level with her kids. "But we have to keep moving." Julia clutched her brother's arm, her eyes darting nervously as faint whispers swirled around them. "What was that laugh?" she asked, her small voice breaking. "It was mean." "It's just the shadows," Sarah replied, forcing a shaky smile, though the words tasted sour in her mouth. "They can't hurt us as long as we stick together." They moved forward, shadows dancing just outside their periphery. Every corner they turned revealed more darkness, more uncertainty, twisting their surroundings into an indecipherable maze. Fear gnawed at Sarah's insides, a constant reminder of the unseen foe. Then, a subtle shift like a breeze through still air. "Felt alive and aware." "Do you hear it?" Ethan whispered, breaking the oppressive silence. Sarah nodded, straining to tune into the unsettling sound, a soft, rhythmic thumping. It pulsed, growing louder, resonating with their racing hearts. "What is that?" Julia whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, feeling dread crawl up her spine. "But we need to find out." The thumping morphed into a chanting chorus, a pitiful harmony of lost souls spilling through the walls. They poured from nowhere, washing over Sarah like icy water. Find the key, they cried. Unlock the fear. Find the truth. What truth? Julia squeaked, her grip tightening on her brother's arm. Keep moving, Sarah urged, grabbing each child's hand as they pressed forward into the oppressive darkness. The hallway twisted, bending unnaturally. Every doorway they passed was dark, beckoning with unknown horrors. Shadows flickered, and for a moment, Sarah swore she saw haunting faces staring back, mouths moving in silent screams. At last, they reached the end of the corridor. A heavy door loomed before them, splintered wood barely holding together. The thumping pulsed behind it, inviting yet sinister. They hesitated, breath hitching in their throats. Should we? Ethan asked, eyes wide, as the door creaked ominously. We have to, Sarah said, heart hammering. Whatever's in there might hold the answers. The shadows want us to find it. With trembling hands, she gripped the doorknob. The metal was icy beneath her touch, sending a shock through her body. Once more she hesitated, catching Julia's fearful gaze. This was a line crossed, a point without return. On the count of 3, Sarah said, steeling herself. 1, 2, 3. She swung the door open and a chill gust surged, sweeping through them like an ice-cold breath. The room was dark, but what she saw inside stopped her breath. Piles of forgotten memories lay scattered around, the remnants of lives erased by terror. In the center, an old mirror, draped in shadows, shimmered like a portal. The reflection twisted, showing flashes of past horrors, people lost to despair, their eyes wide and pleading. Look, said Julia, voice barely a whisper. It's us. And they were, but not. Versions of themselves, distorted, reflected back in the darkness. Their eyes empty yet filled with longing. Mom, what is happening? Ethan whimpered. Nothing good, Sarah breathed, stepping cautiously into the threshold. As she did, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening boom. The mirror's surface rippled unnaturally, voices clawing at the corners of her mind. Face the truth. Join us. Julia latched onto her mom's leg, glancing back in terror. We're stuck. No escape. Sarah felt panic set in, pressure crushing her chest as the mirror pulsed with desperate energy. The shadows circling like vultures, and just then, amidst the cacophony, a flicker of understanding ignited in Sarah's mind. It was tearing her apart, inch by inch. The truth, the very thing they all feared, was not just waiting in the dark, but it was here, begging to be uncovered. What if? She thought, heart racing, as the shadows began to slip through the cracks. But how much was she willing to lose to understand it? Then, from the chaos, the mirror whispered a name that sent tremors down her spine. Sarah, it echoed back, commanding, seductive. And as their eyes locked with the reflections, something inside them began to twist. What does it want from us? Ethan cried, panic flooding the air. Clutching her children tightly, Sarah forced herself to stand tall. We're gonna find out, she said, jaw set. This was it, the moment everything would change. The thumping morphed into laughter, cruel and mocking, as the darkness closed in. And with one trembling breath, Sarah realized, this was only the beginning. What other horrors lay hidden in the reflections, waiting for their chance to claw their way free? The air within the room felt thick and charged, like electricity crackling just before a storm. Sarah tried to catch her breath, her heartbeat thundering in her ears, drowning out the haunting laughter that echoed around them. The mirror shimmered eerily, reflecting not just their images, but their fears, their regrets, and worst of all, their potential futures, a twisted gallery of despair. Mom, Julia whimpered, her little voice barely a whisper above the chaos. I don't want to be here. Her grip tightened on Sarah's leg, knuckles pale against the encroaching shadows. The mirror pulsated, its surface alive with shifting images that seemed to writhe like snakes. Each distorted moment showed them flickering glimpses of life, moments stolen away, choices ripped apart by the unseen forces that trapped them. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat, a sickening mix of fear and anger. Who were they to demand the truth from her? We have to break the mirror, Ethan shouted, his voice sharpening with desperation. Maybe that will let us out. No, Sarah snapped, holding her children close. Maybe the mirror is the way out. It's not just a reflection. It's showing us something. Panic flared in her chest as her mind fought against the urge to surrender to fear. We need to face it together. The laughter morphed into darker whispers, seeping into the cracks of her resolve. Join us. Join us. The voices chanted, wrapping around her like frigid tendrils. You crave the truth, Sarah. Embrace it. Mom, please don't listen. Julia pleaded, eyes wide with terror. But Sarah felt an indescribable pull toward the mirror. A promise of understanding that flickered longingly in the shadows. In that instant, the air grew heavy, and the reflections shifted once again. Suddenly, the mirror revealed porcelain-like figures, ghosts of those trapped before them. They reached out, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes full of despair. Each phantasm seemed to mirror her own desperation, their faces contorting in expressions of anguish. Help us. One of them mouthed, their features flickering like an old film reel. Mom, they're trapped. We need to do something. Ethan's voice quivered, the weight of confusion heavy on his young shoulders. Without thinking, Sarah stepped closer to the mirror. The gleam of the glass pulsated as if it breathed, willing her to come closer. As she did, time seemed to stretch, and a warmth, almost inviting, radiated from its depths. Find the key, a voice echoed again, stronger this time, as the shadows writhed around her. What key? Sarah whispered, a tremor of frustration edging into her voice. What do you want? The mirror responded, rippling violently, revealing scenes from her past. Wandering glimpses of her life flared before her eyes. Moments of joy, regret, and shadows of choices that haunted her. Each memory felt like a hand reaching out, pulling at her heartstrings, crooked decisions and forgotten moments. Lives left unfinished. Mom, don't look, Ethan cried, panic surging through his voice. It's not safe. But curiosity clawed at her. What was the truth they needed to uncover? As the memories replayed, a sudden realization hit her like a punch. It was her own fear that kept them trapped, dreading what was to be faced, the truths they had locked away. Can't. She breathed, eyes wide. The pulsing mirror demanded a sacrifice, but what? Then, the laughter morphed once more, sharply turning into furious shrieks. From the depths of the mirror, shadows began to stretch out, seeping towards her, eager to pull them into the darkness. Mom, run! Ethan yelled, yanking on her hand, but it felt like swimming against a tide. And in that moment of desperate clarity, she didn't know if standing still was right, or if fleeing was their only chance. But now, as shadows lunged and memories collided within the mirror, a single thought raced through her mind. What if facing the truth meant losing everything? Just then, with a scream that echoed through the ages, the mirror cracked. A spiderweb of lines spidered out across its surface, and the room trembled. Together, she shouted, pulling her children close as the darkness swirled hungrily. Whatever lay beyond the threshold of the fractured reflection was unknown. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back. What awaited them in the void beyond the splintered mirror? Would they find freedom or fall deeper into despair? The shadows whispered once more, enticing and cruel. As the world around them began to dissolve, she took a deep breath, her heart racing faster. What was the key to unlocking their fate? The answer rushed toward them like a tempest, and with one final pulse, the door to the unknown swung wide open. The moment they crossed the threshold, darkness enveloped them like a shroud. It was different from the room they had just fled. It felt alive, pulsating around them. The air was dense and clung to their skin, stifling any breath of hope they might have clung to. Where are we? Julia whispered, her voice nearly lost in the choking silence. The shadows swirled, no longer a distant threat, but a jagged reality. Sarah held her close, feeling the tremors that ran through her small frame. Stay close, she instructed, trying to sound braver than she felt. But deep down, doubt gnawed at her. In this place, nothing felt right. The very darkness pulsed with a hunger that made her skin crawl. Ethan stepped forward, tentative. It's like we're inside the mirror, he said, glancing back at his mother with wide eyes. But what are those things? Just ahead, shapes flickered in the gloom, twisting at the edges of recognition. Their forms briefly took the shape of familiar figures from Sarah's life, each warped by emotion and despair. Friends long forgotten, moments she had buried deep beneath the weight of everyday life. They hovered, their expressions a mix of pleading and rage that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Mom, this isn't right," Ethan cried, panic spilling into his tone as he pulled at her sleeve, desperation clouding his eyes. She wanted to turn back, to retreat into that fragile safety of the shattered mirror. But a new chill crept through her heart. "We can't go back," she managed, her voice trembling. Not without knowing. As they ventured further, things shifted around them. The once yawning void morphed, becoming a twisted version of their home. The threads of reality tangled and blurred. Sarah recognized the living room, but the furniture loomed large, oppressive. The colors bled into one another, the air crackling with electric tension. In one corner, a figure loomed, a shadow of guilt and fear. It looked like her mother, but her features were grotesque, twisted into a mask of accusation. "You turned your back on us," it hissed. "Stop it," Sarah shouted, hands trembling as she instinctively shielded her children from the figure's wrath. "That's not true." Another shadow flickered to life beside it, revealing a man with an anguished expression, a lost friend. "You chose the easy path, Sarah," he mourned. "You think you can escape the truth?" Julia clutched her mother tighter, her small body shaking with fear. "Mom, we have to go." "No, Julia. We can't run. We have to find the key." But finding the key felt like searching for a whisper in a storm. Each passing figure clung to her subconscious, whispering their judgments, their truths. They held her accountable for everything she had avoided, the pain she had tried to escape. "Face us." The shadows roared, closing in, their dark tendrils brushing against her skin. The sound of laughter twisted into wails that echoed within the confines of her mind. "Mom, fight!" Ethan shouted, summoning all his courage. "You can beat them." He was right. They were manifestations of her past, fueled by her own guilt and fear. She needed to find the courage to confront them. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, forcing herself into the weight of the darkness. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice carrying a defiance she didn't know she possessed. "You don't control me. I'll own my truth." The shadows recoiled slightly, their forms flickering uncertainly. But in that instant, something cracked within her, a realization throbbing raw and real. Was the key not just an object, but acceptance? And then she saw it, a glimmer amongst the dark. A key, hanging from a flickering shadow, beckoning to her. But as she reached for it, she felt an icy hand latch onto her shoulder, pulling her back. "Don't!" it screamed, morphing into a twisted version of herself, clawing at her resolve. "Mom?" Julia's voice trembled, laced with fear. What if facing this means losing everything? And just like that, a new truth began to develop, a question lurking in the catastrophic silence. What if the darkness didn't just haunt them? What if it was the guide they desperately needed? As the shadows closed in, tightening their grip, sparks of hope ignited deep within. She knew they had to fight, to reclaim their destinies and confront the truths they feared. But could they? What if the darkness was all there was? With the key shimmering at the edge of her vision and shadows pressing in, Sarah's bravery tipped the balance. Just a little further, what price would they pay for the truth? Time was slipping, but the darkness only hungered more. The chaos pulsed around them, echoing with the whispers of the past, the shadows flickering ominously, as if wanting to consume their every breath. Sarah, her heart pounding like a war drum, stared at that glimmering key. It shone like a beacon amidst the darkness. She could feel the weight of fear pressing down on her, so many memories, regrets, and unacknowledged truths converging at this moment. "Mom!" Ethan's voice broke through the thick air, trembling and terrified. "What if this is a trick?" "It might be," Sarah replied, pulling her children closer. But unless we confront this, we won't ever find freedom. Julia's small fingers gripped her leg, but Sarah felt a surge of resolve. She steeled herself, remembering the stories of bravery and resilience her grandmother had told her. Maybe, just maybe, the stories were more than just words, they were an inherited strength. "Stand with me," Sarah whispered fiercely, her voice carrying a steady rhythm of hope. She took a deep breath, summoning all the courage, love, and determination she could muster. "Together we face this." With a fierce resolve, she stepped toward the shimmering key, her heart racing with each stride. The shadows whispered angrily, swirling around her, clawing at her mind, attempting to pull her back into their grasp. "You can't do this. You shouldn't be here," they hissed, voices clawing at her resolve. But Sarah pushed through the din, the urgency building in her chest. "Mom, please be careful," Julia cried, her voice laced with a mixture of fear and worry. But Sarah wouldn't waver. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her children. "Let go of us," she shouted, a surge of power flooding her voice. "We will not be your prisoners." As she lunged forward, the laughter mingled with anguished screams, a discordant symphony that rattled her. The keeper's form materialized, her silhouette darker than the shadows themselves. "You think you can defeat me?" she shrieked, her grin malevolent. "You are nothing." But in that moment, amidst the flickering shadows and cacophony of despair, a bright light erupted from Sarah's heart, illuminating everything around her. The key sparkled vibrantly as if in response to her call. "This is our truth," she declared. "We will not be bound by fear or regret." The shadows recoiled as she reached for the key. It glinted enticingly, pulling at her with a warmth that felt foreign yet familiar. "Together, family, let us break this curse. Trust in our love." The shadows shrieked, frustration reverberating through the air. But her courage illuminated everything as her fingers closed around the key. She felt a surge of warmth flood her body. The darkness wailed, retreating slightly. The keeper stepped back, her face twisted in disbelief, rage swirling in her eyes. "You can't escape," she cried. "No," Sarah said with a steel resolve, "but we'll change the narrative." With the key held high, she felt her children clutching her arms, the warmth radiating between them, bonded by love and resilience. "Do it now," Ethan urged fiercely. Sarah nodded, gathering the strength that surged within her. "And it is with this truth and love that we break this cycle." She thrust the key toward the mirror's surface, and at that moment, a blinding light enveloped them, a purification of everything they had fought against. The shadows writhed and shrieked, their forms distorting as the light tore through them. The keeper's screams echoed, splintering as they faded into oblivion. For a brief moment, everything was silent, just a beam of bright light, wrapping them in warmth. Sarah felt the weight of her past ease, the anguish dissolving, replaced with clarity. With a final flash, the world around them ruptured, and just like that, they were standing in the Timberland Motel's lobby, the ominous sign dangling overhead casting eerie shadows still. Yet somehow they were different. They were free, breathless and exhausted. They stared at one another in disbelief. Tears glimmered in Julia's eyes as she crashed into Sarah's arms. "We made it," she squealed, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan joined them, wrapping his little arms around them tightly. "We're safe." Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of relief, her heart swelling with love. Their spirit was unbreakable, a testament to their bond that darkness could never sever. "Yes," she whispered, pulling her children closer. "We're together, and together we can face anything." With the chaotic night behind them and dawn's light peeking through the motel's dirty windows, Sarah finally understood. She turned her gaze to her children, her heartbeat steadying. The battle had been long, but in that moment, she found hope shining through the cracks of past traumas. "Let us go home, my lovelies," she murmured, guiding them toward the exit. They stepped outside, leaving room 403 behind, each footfall releasing the weight of fear that had consumed them. The haunting shadows of the Timberland Motel would linger, but together they create new stories, new memories, untainted by the darkness. As they walked away, Sarah promised herself one thing. From now on, they would choose the light. And as the motel faded into the distance, an unsettling question echoed in her mind. Would any other wandering souls find the same light? This is when I need you. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss out on our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Every click really makes a difference. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us elevate the light together.